Yes guys, welcome back to another Fantasy Football Fix YouTube video. My name is FPL Nacho, and in this video we are going to be discussing the top transfers going into game week 14. Now of course, we are only 3 game weeks away from the impending World Cup, so transfers and your decision making are imperative right now to that FPL success. You need to be really careful with the moves that you're making and really kind of have that short-term focus in the decisions that you are making, because of course we have unlimited transfers when we do hit the World Cup. So we're going to be covering 3 players that I think you should target going into game week 14. But before we get into that, make sure if you haven't already, you are subscribed to the YouTube channel. And if you enjoy the content, it'd be fantastic if you could drop a like on the video just to show that you did enjoy it. So without further ado, guys, let's get started. Okay guys, so there's only one place to start, and that is going to be the golden boy of FPL right now, Miguel Almiron of Newcastle, just coming off the back of back-to-back 10-point hauls, and most impressively against Spurs in their own back garden. It's been an unbelievable season so far for Miguel Almiron, now priced at 5.3 million. You can see the stats on the screen here. He's having an unbelievable season, and one of those players that a lot of us laughed and joked about if you were considering him as an option. But this season really stepping up in a Newcastle team that are impressing each and every game week. 11 games, 6 goals. And what I want to draw your attention to here is the shot volume that he is delivering. 31 shots so far this season is the 4th most of all midfielders. But again, shot volume doesn't really indicate too much to us. But what I really do like to see is 21 shots of those in the box, which is again the 4th most of all midfielders. So whereas we compare him, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, someone like Maddison of Leicester, although the shot volume is really high, a lot of those do come from outside the box. It's really, really positive to see that 21 shots in the box for Miguel Almiron suggests to me that he is getting some decent opportunities in this Newcastle team. Now, as I said, the 2nd highest scorer midfielder in the game. And I really do think when we are looking at players like Almiron, we need to take the price out of the consideration. If I was reading out the stats that I were right now and I didn't show you the price or the player, you would easily be thinking that this is a player in the top tier of the game, maybe anywhere between 8 million to 10 million. So the fact that we put a 5.3 million bracket, it naturally makes you think that, oh, he's not going to continue the way he's playing, and you naturally have some sort of negative thoughts about them once you introduce the price into the equation. But looking at the stats that he's delivering right now, 5.09 expected FPL points per 90 is again unbelievable reading, and this is better than the likes of Saka, Mason Mount, and even Son at Spurs. So he is over delivering against players that are 3, 4, 5 million pound more expensive than him. Now, going forward, because of course what he's done in the past is fantastic, but if we are looking to bring him in, we need to be looking at the future. And over the next 3 fixtures, Newcastle have Aston Villa at home, which I would say prior to yesterday, the fixture was very good. But with the appointment of Unai Emery, very tough one to pronounce that could be a slightly trickier fixture than first anticipated. But again, we need to remember that both Almiron and Newcastle as a team are right up there as one of the best teams in the league right now. Southampton away, I think, is a really good attacking fixture for Newcastle. And finishing off at home to Chelsea. Now, as I said, Newcastle at home are a different beast. 4th best at home for expected goals, non-pen, and both for expected goals. So they at home are one of the best teams in the league. So I don't necessarily view the Chelsea game as a bad fixture for Newcastle assets. And we saw what they've done against Spurs in their own back garden, as I mentioned. So to round up in terms of Almiron, yes, he's been in fantastic form so far this season. And yes, I do think there are better options out there like Saka, like Phil Foden and Man City. I can't deny that those options are still better options than Almiron in game week 14. But if we are in the market right now for a player and you don't have the funds available to get those 8.5 million bracket, then I really do think Almiron needs to come into the consideration here. I think the fixtures coming up, although tricky, do pose potential for continued points for him. And what I'm really liking to see, as I said, is the shot volume's there and confidence is there for him, which is something that we haven't seen in Almiron, although he has been such a high ceiling player that hasn't really delivered over the years. I'm really starting to see the player that we were all anticipating to see. So let me know your thoughts in the comments, guys. 11.5 predicted points over the next 3 might not necessarily seem the best, but it's worth noting that he's the 4th best predicted points for all midfielders at 7 million and less. So again, he is looking good in the predicted points department when we look at the value of a player. So let me know your thoughts in the comments, guys. I still think Almiron is a very good transfer in. It's just all about your team structure right now and the direction that you want to be spending your allocated funds. So guys, next up we're going to be looking at another player who was a midfielder who was starting to come into consideration just before this World Cup. So that man is going to be Man United's Rashford. Slightly more expensive than Almiron at 6.6 million. But someone who has been continually impressing on the eye test and the underlying stats. But I would argue not necessarily delivering from an FPL perspective so far. So 11 games so far this season and only 3 goals. But an expected goals of 3.96. So it's worth noting, his expected goals of 3.96 is the second best of all midfielders. The only person beating him right now this season is Mohamed Salah. And I think the narrative right now of Rashford is very much reflective of the underlying stats we're seeing here. Whenever I've watched Rashford, and a lot of the community do agree with this, it feels like he gets into some fantastic opportunities, but his finishing kind of doesn't really live up to the standard. And of course, that could be an issue, of course, when we are looking at an FPL option. But I always want to be considering the player that is at least getting the opportunities and the big chances. And you can see that 8 big chances so far this season for Marcus Rashford is actually the second most for big chances of all midfielders. So again, really positive reading, even though there has been a little bit to desire on his finishing. As I said, I want to be bringing in the player that is getting these underlying stats, because I do think the player and the quality that Rashford is, eventually that finishing will come. And I also think as well, slightly controversial, the absence of Ronaldo is only going to benefit Marcus Rashford and Man United as a team. So when we do look at past data, we are of course looking at occasions where he's played with Ronaldo or a disjointed Man United team where they're going through the motions. I think when we are looking at fixtures coming up, West Ham at home, Villa away and Fulham away, I would agree that the fixtures aren't necessarily the best between now and the World Cup when we compare to the likes of Man City's fixtures. But I really do think we're investing in a team that are really starting to find their feet going into the World Cup. Whereas other teams are being so unpredictable, the likes of Liverpool, for example, I think we're in a good moment right now for Man United. And sometimes when we're bringing in assets, although the player is the main focus, we also need to see how the overall team is performing. And I'm seeing really good things right now from Man United in the eye test. And I think they could finish the season really strong going into the World Cup. Now, looking at the expected FPL points per 90, 5.68 is the 5th best of all midfielders. The only ones topping him is Salah, KDB, to name a few of the premiums. And again, that is the big buzzword here, the premiums that are outscoring him, because we need to remember his price point at 6.6 million is offering fantastic FPL value in a Man United team that we could argue is a top 4 side on their day. So I think right now, as I mentioned, Saka, Foden naturally are going to get the headlines for being the midfielder that you need to bring into your team. But I think right now, if you're sat there in a position where you are looking for a bit of a differential, you can't get up to the 8.5 million midfielder price bracket. I really do think that Rashford is a fantastic differential transfer coming into your Game Week 14 team between now and the World Cup. I can see goals for Man United in these fixtures. And if Rashford can operate on that left flank and they get Martial back in the team, I think that even enhances Rashford's opportunity. I don't necessarily think he is much of a rotation risk. I think Erik ten Hag does value Rashford in this team. But let me know your thoughts in the comments, guys. What are your thoughts on Marcus Rashford? Is he a player on your radar or somebody who aren't really prioritising right now because of the other premium midfielders available like Foden and Saka? Be great to hear in the comments what your thoughts are, guys. So last up, the last player, third and foremost, trying to finish that off there, is going to be another Man United player, not so glamorous, but somebody who I think can free up funds for the rest of your team to invest in those other assets. And that man is going to be, again, Man United's Diego Dalot. Now, somebody, again, outside of FPL who I have been incredibly impressed with. Someone like Dalot I really thought was kind of a waste of space at Man United, but after seeing him so far this season, it is shown what a fantastic player he is, and starting to transition as a bit more of an FPL option for us to consider. 11 games, 1 assist isn't the best reading right now, it is worth noting, because with Man United's fullbacks, we're not seeing overlapping fullbacks like we were seeing at Liverpool under Klopp back in the day with Robertson and Trent. This is very much more a inverted fullback position that the likes of Dalot gets into, and kind of operates more as a centre midfield creator rather than an overlapping fullback. But again, I don't think that necessarily is a bad thing. 16 attempted assists, which is actually the 5th most of all defenders. So again, promising signs, even though again, the attempted assists have only led to actual 1 FPL assist. And 9 shots as well is decent reading for somebody, as I mentioned, who is playing a bit more as an inverted fullback and not necessarily being the one bombing on beyond the front line, like Matt Doherty, for example, at Spurs, to just name one. What I really do like here is the upside that Dalot is potentially offering. First and foremost, what he is starting to prove is a bit of a bonus point magnet at Man United. So when they are doing the good things, keeping clean sheets and ticking over nicely, he does start to really eat up those bonus points, and he's come away with quite a few so far this season, which is promising reading. And the expected FPL points of 52.11 is actually 12.11 more than his actual returns of 40. Now we need to remember, with defenders, it can be a little bit skewed because, of course, we anticipate a clean sheet and a small mistake can affect their actual delivery. But it reads to me here that there's still a ceiling to go with Dalot over the next few fixtures. Now, it's worth mentioning, over the last 4 games, and again, I know it's a small sample size, but I think with Man United, as I mentioned, we're starting to get into a bit of a rhythm with them and starting to see the really good things come out. It's the first time they've been able to roll out their best team with the likes of Casemiro and Eriksen in the midfield to actually get some dominance in that team. And I think naturally that always impacts them positively from a defensive perspective when they're not playing basketball, football every other game just to try and contend in a game. So over the last 4 games, they've had the best expected goals conceded per 90 of all teams. Now, it's worth mentioning, off the back of their fixture against Chelsea, the Varane injury could negatively impact them. So we need to see how that is going to influence the team going forward. But I really do think that even with the absence of Varane, there are still really good things happening at Man United. And if you are trying to free up some funds in your team, maybe drop down a defender to someone like Dalot to then invest the funds elsewhere, upgrade maybe a forward to Harry Kane. I think Dalot is someone that we need to consider. I see a lot of the conversation being about Ben White at a similar price. And while I do think he is a good option as well, I think Dalot just has that level above, in particular the better fixtures, where we could see better returns from him. So let me know your thoughts in the comments, guys, what your thoughts are on the top 3 that we have picked going into game week 14. As I just want to highlight, the likes of Phil Foden, the likes of Saka are still fantastic options, but I just wanted to highlight some that maybe managers who are looking for a bit more differential options could be a consideration for your team. So that's going to wrap up today's video, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you did enjoy it, make sure you do hit that subscribe button. And of course, if you enjoyed this specific video, we'd really appreciate you liking that video. All the information has been taken from fantasyfootballfix.com. All the links are in the bio. And of course, leading up to the World Cup, there are so many transfers happening that price changes are going crazy. So make sure you do download the app for free to keep up to date with all the potential FPL price changes. And I will see you in the next video, which from my behalf will be Friday live stream. But of course, we will be back with Eddie's video on Wednesday. So that just leaves us to say have a great day, guys, and I'll see you soon. Cheers.